In this video, we are going to cover 20 latest questions on AZ-900. All questions covered in this video series are recently updated in 2023. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Once again, we are back with a set of 20 questions with answers, and I will also provide you Microsoft documentation, exam tips, and during the video, I will ask few questions answering to which you can get a free PDF file with all the questions and answers discussed during this part 3 and previous part 2, so a total of 40 questions. Please do not miss to watch the previous parts to make sure that you are covering all the latest questions. So let's jump in to learn Azure, and here comes our first question. And today's episode, I would like to open with the correction in question number 14 that we discussed in part 2. Let's read the question. The question says that you have legacy applications that require specialized mainframe hardware and you have newer shared applications. Which cloud deployment model would be best for you? Your options are hybrid cloud, private cloud, and public cloud. In the last part, we picked the answer as hybrid cloud. Please note this is an incorrect answer. The correct answer to this question is option B, private cloud. The reason is very simple, that in the question it is clearly mentioned that we have a requirement for specialized mainframe hardware. So friends, in case you have these kind of special hardware requirements, you should always go for the private cloud. The reason is that in case of private cloud, you have more control over the hardware, while in case of public cloud, for example, you have Azure, AWS or GCP, in these cases, you are more relying on the hardware that is provided by your cloud provider. So that's why private cloud is the correct answer. And friends, I request all of you to please reach out to us in case you find any answer is not correct. I promise you we will reanalyze the same and bring the correct ones in the subsequent parts. And for this one, I would like to thank Luigi Zembetti for pointing this out. And now let's jump to the very first question of part 3. Question number 21, and this is a question that confuses lot of AZ-900 exam takers. But this is an important question, not just from the exam point of view, but also important for your actual working on Azure cloud. So let's read question number 21. It says an Azure administrator plans to run a PowerShell script that creates Azure resources. You need to recommend which computer configuration to use to run the script. The solution given is run the script from a computer that runs Linux and has Azure CLI tools installed. Does this meet the goal? Now friends, I have 5 variations of this question, including this one. Let's read all of them and let's check out what are the different solutions given in all these questions. And then I will give you all the correct answers and also summarize everything for you. So here comes the second variation of the same question, exactly the same question, but the solution is different. The solution this time says that run the script from a computer that runs Chrome operating system and uses Azure Cloud Shell. Does this meet the goal? Now let's check out the third variation, and this time the solution given is run the script from a computer that runs Mac OS and has PowerShell Core 6.0 installed. Does this meet the goal? And the fourth variation is in question number 24. It says that you have Bash in Azure Cloud Shell. Does this meet the goal? And now let's check out the fifth and the last variation of this question. In this question, the solution given is you use a computer that runs Windows 10 and has Azure PowerShell module installed. Does this meet the goal? Now let me give you the answers of all these 5 questions. I will also give you Microsoft documentation to prove our answer and also to do the self-study. So once again, I'm back on the question number 21. The correct answer for the question number 21 is no, which means that you cannot run a PowerShell script that creates Azure resources from a computer that runs Linux and has Azure CLI tools installed. Coming to the question number 22, the correct answer for this question is yes. So this is the correct combination of operating system and the tools installed to run the PowerShell script. Coming to the question number 23, the correct answer is no. So you cannot run a PowerShell script that creates Azure resources in case you have a Mac OS with a PowerShell Core 6.0 installed. And friends, I know this is a very controversial question. I have seen lot of variations to the answers for this question. We will surely understand this in a little bit more detail, but let's check out the answer for the remaining two questions. And the correct answer for question number 24 is yes. So this also is a correct combination. And now for the last variation of this question, the correct answer for the question number 25 is yes. Now let me summarize the answers for all these 5 questions. I will also give you my logic behind choosing these answers, and then we will see some of the Microsoft documentation. So here comes the summary for the question number 21 to question number 25. So you can read the question once again here. In the question number 21, we were given with the solution that says run the script from a computer that runs Linux and has Azure CLI tools installed. For this, we chose false as an answer, and the reason is that with Azure CLI, you do not execute PowerShell script. And then for the question number 22, we chose true as the answer. And the reason is that from a browser, you can connect to Azure portal and execute Azure PowerShell cmdlet or commandlets. And then for the question number 23, we chose false as the answer. And the reason is that you need to have Azure PowerShell module. PowerShell Core 6.0 only is not enough. Now let me show you some documentation for this PowerShell Core 6.0. So friends, I did a lot of research on this question. There is a ton of confusion on this question all around the internet. So during my research, I found this documentation from Microsoft. It says PowerShell Core 6.0 generally available and supported. You can very well notice it's an old documentation from 2018. So here you can read that PowerShell Core 6.0 is a new edition of PowerShell that is cross-platform. So basically it's compatible with Windows, Mac OS and Linux operating system. So I went through this documentation, then I also checked this documentation here, which says what's new in PowerShell Core 6.0. You can see this documentation is now from 2020. All about PowerShell Core 6.0 is given here as well. But in none of the documentation, I could find commands that can run Azure PowerShell. And then I did a little bit more research, come across this documentation here, which says installing PowerShell on Mac OS. And friends, this is a very latest documentation. You can note this is from January 2023. And this documentation gives you a clear note here. You can read that PowerShell 7.3 is an in-place upgrade that removes previous versions of PowerShell. And friends, my research did not stop here. I also have this documentation. This documentation also revolves around PowerShell. You can read a lot about PowerShell. One more documentation I want to show you is this one, which says quick start for PowerShell in Azure Cloud Shell. Finally, I have one more documentation, this one, which says install Azure AZ PowerShell module. Here also in this documentation, you can see a clear recommendation from Microsoft, which says that PowerShell 7.0.6 LTS, PowerShell 7.1.3 or higher is the recommended version of PowerShell for use with Azure AZ PowerShell module on all platforms. To cut the long story short, you can see everywhere Microsoft is recommending you not to use Azure PowerShell Core 6.0, but to move towards PowerShell 7 or higher versions. And that's the reason, my friends, I have chosen false for this question. Okay, so now let me give you the quick logic behind question number 24 and 25. So for the question number 24, we picked true as the answer. And the reason is that Azure Cloud Shell can be used for both Bash or PowerShell, either on Android phone or laptop. Coming to the last question, we have true as the answer. The reason is that you have PowerShell and the module to create Azure resources. So basically, we already have Azure PowerShell module installed on Windows 10. And this combination is fully equipped to run PowerShell script that creates Azure resources. So hopefully this research will help you understand all the answers in a better way. All the links based on which I did my research are available in the description box. I would highly recommend you to do some research on your own. And in case you find another version of this question, or maybe you disagree with any of the answers that I have picked, please share your thoughts in the comment section below and I would be really happy to discuss it further. And friends, in case you want a free PDF file containing all the questions that we have discussed in part 2 and this part 3, you need to give me the correct answers for the question number 3, question number 6, question number 26, question number 32 and question number 40. Share your answers in the comment section below and then you can get your own free PDF file. Now coming to the question number 26. Question says that your company hosts an accounting application named App 1 that is used by all the customers of the company. App 1 has a low usage during the first 3 weeks of each month and a very high usage during the last week of each month. Which benefit of Azure Cloud Services support cost management for this type of usage pattern? Your options are high availability, high latency, elasticity, and the last option is load balancing. The correct answer for this question is option C, elasticity. So friends, elastic computing is the ability to quickly expand or decrease computer processing, memory, storage resources to meet the changing demand without worrying about the capacity planning and engineering for the peak usage. So in simple words, elasticity is the ability where you can increase or decrease the computer resources based on the demand, and this increase and decrease of computer resources is done to reduce the cost. Now let's move on to the question number 27. It says that you plan to deploy several Azure virtual machines. You need to control the ports that devices on the internet can use to access virtual machines. What should you use? And the options given are a network security group, also known as NSG. Then we have an Azure Active Directory. The third option is network gateway, and the fourth option is Azure Key Vault. The correct answer for this question is option A, a network security group. So friends, read this question very carefully and understand this question is asking us to filter out the network traffic to and from the Azure virtual machines. And the best way to do is NSG or network security group, which is our option number A. So this is the Microsoft documentation which says how network security group filter the network traffic. And here you can read that you can use an Azure network security group to filter out network traffic to and from Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. A network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound traffic to or the outbound traffic from several types of Azure resources. For each rule, you can specify source and destination, port and protocol. Please note port and protocol, and also you can specify source and destination. Now let me show you interesting image given here. Here you can see that we have a virtual network. We are also given with some subnet. We have subnet 1, subnet 2 and subnet 3. All these subnets contain virtual machines like virtual machine 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then you can see that all of these virtual machines are also containing NIC, which is network interface card. And then on top of these NIC cards, we have NSG, network security group. And these NSG help us to filter out the traffic. We can also see a TCP port 80 here, and this is open internet. Now friends, let me give you quick details of all the services that we are seeing in this question. All the services are very important, so let me give you one liner for each. So here you can see that you can use Azure Network Security Group to filter out traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. And then we have Azure AD or Azure Active Directory, which is a cloud-based identity and access management service. And this service helps your employees access external resources such as Microsoft 365, Azure Portal, and thousands of other SaaS applications. And then we have Azure Network Gateway. So Azure VPN Gateway connects your on-premises networks to Azure through site-to-site VPN in a similar way that you set up and connect to a remote branch office. And finally, the Azure Key Vault. So basically, this is a cloud service that provides a secure store for your secrets. You can securely store keys, passwords, certificates, and other secrets. So hopefully this quick introduction will help you understand these services better. You can always read Microsoft documentation, and there will be a lot of questions on these services as well in the subsequent parts. Moving on with the question number 28, it says that your Azure environment contains multiple Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that a virtual machine named VM1 is accessible from the internet over HTTP. The solution given is you modify a network security group. Does this meet the goal? And friends, I have 3 more variations of this question as well. So let me show you all of them. The question number 29, exactly the same question. However, the solution given here is that you modify a DDoS protection plan. Does this meet the goal? Coming to the question number 30, exactly the same question once again. However, the answer is that you modify an Azure firewall. Does this meet the goal? And now let's check out the final version of this question. The solution this time is that you modify an Azure Traffic Manager profile. Does this meet the goal? So let's very quickly check the answers for all the 4 variations, and then I will summarize everything for you. So the answer for question number 28 is yes. The answer for question number 29 is no. And then moving on to the question number 30, this time we have a no. And in case of 31 as well, we have a no. And now it's time that we summarize all the questions from question number 28 till question number 31. For the question number 28, NSG was given as the solution. We picked true here. The reason is that you can use NSG to filter out the network traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. I just show you the documentation on NSG. Please go back and read that documentation for more detail. And then in the question number 29, DDoS protection plan was given as the solution. Here we picked false. And this is because DDoS is a form of attack on a network resource. DDoS protection plan is used to protect against DDoS attacks. And that's why it has nothing to do with accessibility of virtual machine over HTTP. And then in the question number 30, the solution given was Azure Firewall. We picked false. The reason is that Azure Firewall is a cloud-native and intelligent network firewall security service that provides the best of the breed threat protection for your cloud workloads running in Azure. So Azure Firewall also does not fit the ask of the question. Moving on with the question number 31, the solution given was to modify an Azure Traffic Manager. Here also we picked false as the answer. The reason is that Azure Traffic Manager is a DNS-based load balancing solution. This also has nothing to do with assessing of virtual machine over HTTP. I hope friends that these kind of summaries will really help you to prepare for AZ-900. You can keep the screenshots of all these summaries so that you have all the variations of these kind of questions in one place. Now let's move on to the question number 32. It says an organization that hosts its infrastructure in a private cloud can close its data center. Now in this question, you can read the instruction that review the underlying text. Here you can see that we have an underlined text. If it makes a statement correct, then you have to select no change needed. You can see here that we have first option given as no change needed. But in case you think that this underlined text makes this entire statement incorrect, in that case you have to choose either of the other 3 options left. And the other 3 options are option B is in a hybrid cloud, option C is in the public cloud, and then we have on a Hyper-V host. And the correct answer for this question is option C, in the public cloud. So basically what we are saying is that this statement or this underlying text is incorrect, and we have to replace this text with in the public cloud. And this will make the correct statement as an organization that hosts its infrastructure in the public cloud can close its data center. So let me give you a quick distinction between private cloud and public cloud. So a private cloud is hosted in your own data center. Therefore, you cannot close your data center if you are using private cloud. On the other hand, public cloud is hosted externally. For example, Microsoft Azure, an organization that hosts its infrastructure in public cloud can close its data center. Moving on with the question number 33, we have what are the 2 characteristics of public cloud? Each correct answer presents a complete solution, and you have a note which says each correct selection is worth 1 point. The options given are a dedicated hardware, unsecured connection, limited storage, metered pricing, and the last option is self-service management. And please note, my friends, that we have to pick 2 characteristics. So that means we have 2 correct answers here, and the correct answers are option D and option E. Okay, so now let me explain why we have chosen these 2 as the answer. With public cloud, basically you get pay as you go pricing. So you pay only for what you use. There is no capital expenditure, and that's why we have metered pricing. Now coming to the self-service management, well, in the public cloud, you are responsible for the deployment and configuration of the cloud resources such as virtual machines, storage, or maybe even website. So let's say in case of Microsoft Azure, you want to spin a virtual machine, then simply you would go to the Azure portal, spin a virtual machine for yourself. You do not need to raise a ticket for that, or you do not need to connect to a help desk from Microsoft Azure. Go to the Azure portal and create your virtual machine. But friends, here I want to highlight a very important point. So please understand, Azure portal is not the only way to create resources in Azure. You can also use JSON file, Azure Cloud Shell, PowerShell, Bash, etc. So Azure gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to creation of resources. And now comes our question number 34. It says that you can create group policies in Azure Active Directory. And you have to tell whether it's a true statement or it's a false statement. And this one, my friends, is a false statement. So let me try to explain. Group policies are part of Azure Active Directory domain services. And then Azure Active Directory domain services is part of Azure Entra Now. And that you can also read here. It says that Azure Active Directory domain services, part of Microsoft Entra, enables you to manage domain services such as Windows Domain Join, group policies. We also have LDAP and Kerberos authentication without having to deploy, manage and patch domain controllers. So I'm sure you have noticed that group policies are part of Azure Active Directory domain services and not Azure Active Directory. And just as a side note, how many of you know when was the Microsoft Entra added in the course of AZ-900? Well, it was not very long back. It was officially announced on 28th of October 2022. I have created a detailed video on that. You can find that video in our YouTube channel. Also friends, please note that I will cover some quick questions on Azure Active Directory domain services in the next part. So please make sure to join in and subscribe to the channel. Now here comes the question number 35. It says that you can join Windows 10 devices to Azure Active Directory. You have to tell whether it's a true statement or a false statement. So here we have Microsoft documentation on Azure AD joint devices. Here in this table, you can clearly see operating systems, all Windows 11 and Windows 10 devices except home editions. So based on that documentation from Microsoft, we can clearly say that we can surely join Windows 10 devices to Azure Active Directory. And now here comes our question number 36. It says that you can join Android devices to Azure Active Directory. Once again, you have to tell whether it's a true statement or a false statement. And this one, my friends, is a false statement. You can refer the same documentation that I just showed you to validate this answer as well. Coming up now is question number 37. It says that your company plans to migrate all its data and resources to Azure. The company's migration plan states that only platform as a service or PaaS solutions must be used in Azure. You need to deploy an Azure environment that meets company's migration plan. The solution given here is that you create an Azure App Service and Azure SQL databases. Does this meet the goal? The correct answer, my friends, is yes. And this is because both Azure App Service and Azure SQL Database are example of platform as a service or PaaS solution. And friends, once again, Microsoft can fit in lot of services in this kind of questions. So there are lot of variations that can be created for these kind of questions. Let me show you all of them. So here comes question number 38. Question is exactly the same. However, the solution is that you create an Azure App Service and Azure Virtual Machine that have Microsoft SQL Server installed. Does this meet the goal? And this time, my friends, the correct answer is no. And the reason is that though App Service is a PaaS solution, but on the other hand, Microsoft Azure Virtual Machine is IaaS or Infrastructure as a Service. And that's why the entire solution cannot be considered as platform as a service. And here comes one more variation, question number 39. The solution this time is that you create an Azure App Service and Azure Storage account. And once again, my friends, it's a no, because App Service, once again, it's a platform as a service, but Azure Storage account is IaaS or Infrastructure as a Service. So therefore, this entire solution will not fit as platform as a service. So as I said, there can be lot of variations of these kind of questions. Microsoft can present lot of new services. So in case you have other versions of this question and you want to discuss with us, do let us know in the comment section. Now let me show you one more variation but in a different format. So here comes question number 40. It says that your company plans to migrate all its data and resources to Azure. The company migration plan states that only platform as a service solution must be used in Azure. And you need to deploy an Azure environment that meets company's migration plan. What should you create? Your options are an Azure Virtual Machines, Azure SQL Database, and Azure Storage accounts. The second option is an Azure App Service and Azure Virtual Machines that have Microsoft SQL Server installed. The third option is an Azure App Service and Azure SQL Databases. And the fourth one is an Azure Storage accounts and web server in Azure Virtual Machines. And once again, the option C is the correct answer, and Azure App Service and Azure SQL databases. And here I want to share a quick tip. Friends, always remember that in these kind of questions, firstly, you must understand whether the question is asking about PaaS or SaaS, which is software as a service, or IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service. And then with that understanding, always check all the services that are given in the option. All those services should fit in the migration plan. So if the company wants to move towards platform as a service, all the services should be platform as a service. And similarly for software as a service and infrastructure as a service. So these were 20 questions for today. In the next episodes, I will come up with more exciting questions. And in case you want to share or discuss any question that you have come across, but you don't know the answer, you can always connect us in the comment section below or any other social media platform. There is a lot of learning coming up in the next episodes, so please make sure to subscribe the channel, press that bell icon, and we will make sure to bring more quality content on Microsoft Azure. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.
If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.